Hello, welcome. I've got a couple of very special guests with me today. Today we're going to be discussing a new release, Halcyon Years by Alastair Reynolds. With me today to discuss this book, I have a couple of other booktubers. Firstly, we have Brandon from the channel Sci-Fi Brandon, and we also have Audrey from Audrey Approved. So welcome both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
So, yeah, but the reason I chose you two to join me in this discussion is having followed both of your channels, which I recommend viewers of this to check out. I think we're all Alastair Reynolds fans, I think, to some extent. Is that true?
Yes, we are.
Yes,
Okay.
I would consider Reynolds my favorite author.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've read quite a few of his. I still have several to read, but I've read most of them, I think.
Okay. In my case, I don't know how many of his I've read, maybe about 15 books, something like that. I've read all of the Revelation Space books and the books in that universe, a few of his novellas, but there's a lot of his that I haven't got around to yet. How about you, Audrey?
Yeah, he has a book, Century Reign, that is, I believe, is similar to this, but I haven't read it. Have either of you guys read Century Reign?
I haven't read that one. I'm a bit of a Reynolds newbie compared to you guys. I feel like before 2025, I'd only read one of his books, House of Suns, and then last year I read 6 or 7 of them, so I'm still under 10.
Oh.
But I really enjoy a lot of the stuff that I get from him.
So you had a good year of Reynolds last year, then.
He was by far my most read author last year.
That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah, House of Suns is one of his most acclaimed ones, which I haven't got around to yet, but I'm hoping to read that one.
Yeah. I read that for a book club I have at work, and I think a lot of people at work really liked that book and that author because of it.
Yeah, you need to move that to the top of your TBR.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get a few more of his books read this year, and that's top of the list. Speaking of which, does anyone have a favorite or one of your favorites among his works? Brandon?
I think my favorite is probably Chasm City, and that's, of course, in the Revelation Space series. It's almost a standalone, but I think you still need to read at least the first Revelation Space book. But it's kind of set aside from the series and it's its own contained story, but set in the same universe. But I think that's probably my favorite one.
Yeah, I liked Chasm City. I think it's got, of all his books, at least the ones that I've read, I think that one's got the most kind of cyberpunk feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
How about you, Audrey?
I haven't read Chasm City. That's actually, I think that will be my next Reynolds book. You know, it might be a tie between House of Suns and The Prefect. I just feel like I really enjoyed some of the settings, especially in The Prefect with like the glitter band and you know all the scenes there. So I think that one would probably be my favorite.
Yeah, Chasm City is set in the glitter band on Yellowstone, so it's in that same area.
Yeah.
Right. Just in a different time period.
Right.
What about you, Robin?
I would say I'm also a big fan of The Prefect. If I was going to say one of his books being his favorite novel of his, it'd probably be The Prefect, aka Aurora Rising, which is also a kind of mystery crime thriller.
Yes, yeah.
But it's probably a tie between that and his novella Diamond Dogs.
Yeah, I really like Diamond Dogs.
Yeah.
Diamond Dogs was the last one. It was the last Reynolds book that I read last year. So it's my most recent read besides for this one. And it was really good. It was really good as well.
Yeah, so I really liked The Prefect. The sequel, I thought the sequel, Elysium Fire, wasn't as good. It was kind of the middle book in that trilogy. But Machine Vendetta was really good. I think I like Machine Vendetta better than The Prefect.
Yeah, I might actually agree with that. I can't quite decide which of those two I prefer, but I think of that trilogy kind of like a horseshoe. It's like it dips in the middle. But I still think Elysium Fire is a decent read.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't quite match the greatness of the first book or the final book.
Have y'all read Blue Remembered Earth? That series?
I read that last year, yeah.
Okay. I'm also intrigued by that one, but I know it's a much different setting, right?
It is. It's a lot more optimistic. It's got elephants in it. I like elephants, so I thought it was cool, but yeah, it's a good book.
Okay.
I've not read that one. I do have it on my bookshelf, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, it doesn't have the gritty feel from Revelation Space. It's, like I said, it's kind of more optimistic, but it's a good one.
Cool. Okay. So, Halcyon Years, let's talk about this book. If you don't know, this is Alastair Reynolds' latest book. Was published, when was it published? I think late October in the UK. The US release, I can't remember off the top of my head when it is.
I believe it's the 27th. Yeah, January 27th.
Yeah.
Right, so it hasn't officially come out in the US yet. And it is a kind of mystery crime thriller with sci-fi elements. Who would like to describe what, in a nutshell, what is Halcyon Years about? Brandon.
Yeah, it's a crime noir thriller. It's set on a generational ship called the Halcyon, and it's about this private eye, Yuri Gagarin, who is also a resurrected cosmonaut from the Soviet Union days. So I thought it was interesting that Alastair picked Yuri Gagarin as the main character. He's the first man into space, and he's a Russian cosmonaut. So it was kind of cool to see that. But it's about him as a private eye, and he's contacted to investigate some accidental deaths on Halcyon, and it kind of leads from there. His investigation leads to some more mysteries about the deaths, about the ship itself, about Yuri himself. So it's kind of a story of a mystery of just more and more reveals as you read through. So
yes. And obviously, the sci-fi element, which is most apparent from the start, is it's set on a giant spaceship.
Yes.
I think at its heart, it is a kind of noir crime thriller. The science fiction elements become more apparent as the story progresses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the setting, I thought, so it's on this massive ship, but the setting feels very much, I would almost kind of, early 1900s, maybe 1930s, 1940s. There's kind of a mix of different technologies. I think Yuri, he smokes cigarettes, I think. They have telephones, like landline phones, but there's also kind of a mix of more advanced technologies in there too, a little bit. But there's some gangsters, and there's, interesting characters, and it definitely has the feel of that kind of hard-boiled crime mystery that you'd expect from like the 40s.
Absolutely. It's definitely got that aesthetic, isn't it? As you can probably tell by the cover design and the, as you say, Yuri's he's a private detective, right? He's constantly smoking. He's drinking, is it Scotch, I think?
I think Scotch,
yeah. So if you like that style of classic noir crime fiction, this book might just appeal to you, even if you're not really a sci-fi fan.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't read a ton of like noir fiction before. I've read a few of the classics, and I feel like Yuri is interesting because he's not like, when I think of noir fiction, I think of like a main detective that's a little like almost like anti-hero, right? Like a little gritty, like you vote for him or you root for him, but you like, he's not that great of a guy. And I feel like Yuri was actually kind of overall like a very positive character, or like he didn't have a lot of that kind of like dark undercurrent. But, along the investigation, he meets up with a policeman named Lemmy. And I feel like Lemmy to me was like the quintessential noir, detective, kind of gritty, kind of corrupt, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the characters then, shall we? So we've mentioned that Yuri is the resurrected Russian cosmonaut, the first person in space, which is an interesting choice, I think. I don't know if Alastair Reynolds has ever used a real-life character before in his fiction. Yeah. And I'm usually a little bit ambivalent when authors do that. But yeah, so Yuri, of course, in real life died in an aircraft accident in the 60s when he was very young.
Mm-hmm.
And now, in this book, he's been resurrected working as a private detective. And when I first realized that was what was going on, I thought this was quite a strange choice. The thing it brought to mind for me is Riverworld, Philip Jose Farmer's series, which he wrote in the 70s, which features a cast of real-life historical characters who have been resurrected in an artificially constructed afterlife. At first, I was a little unsure about that choice of character, but it does kind of make a bit more sense as the story progresses without wanting to spoil anything. I thought it was quite a neat idea. What did you think?
Audrey, you go ahead.
I thought I was also I was very curious, like, why the choice to resurrect like a real life person. And I feel like for a good chunk of the book, I was like, you could have maybe put a different name here and it wouldn't have impacted things. Maybe a little bit more towards the end, this comes into play. But I do think with some minor tweaks, Reynolds could have put, just a fictional name in for that character and built out a little bit of a background. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that kind of, I haven't read this Riverside series that you've mentioned. I thought it was an interesting choice. I don't know if I love the choice, but it didn't bother me. But at least the beginning, I was like, I wonder why he did this.
I think it just kind of adds a kind of a creative spin on it. And so a lot of the characters remark like how short Yuri is. Like Yuri in real life was he was a short guy. He was like 5 feet tall. And I think, so he was selected kind of as a cosmonaut so he could fit. So you had to have a small guy to fit into the crew capsule. So, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Some of the characters kind of make fun of him a little bit for that. And he also has a Russian accent, which kind of sets him apart from the rest of the people on Halcyon, the culture and everything. So he has a Russian accent, so he's a little bit different. And so as soon as he talks, people kind of immediately know he's different. They know that he's been resurrected as kind of a person from the past, and they call him Jax. So if you're resurrected, if you're frozen and then resurrected later on, you're a Jack, because you're a little bit different from the normal culture and you're easy to spot. So I thought that was kind of an interesting little thing he added there.
But people don't recognize him, right? They recognize him as different, but they don't recognize him as Yuri.
Yeah,
right?
They have no idea who Yuri Gagarin is.
Yeah.
Right. So the kind of the thing which sparks off this story is there are a couple of suspicious deaths at the start of the book. Two very powerful families. There are two families which kind of oversee the ship and have done for generations. This ship, by the way, has been on a voyage to a new star, and it has been for, I can't remember, hundreds of years, right? And so it's basically it's almost like a generation ship. I mean, that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's got cryogenic frozen bodies on it.
Yeah. From time to time, people get resurrected from the I forget what it's called now. Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
But most people just kind of live out their entire lives on this ship, and just wait for their descendants to finally reach their destination. And again, I forget the name of what it's called. Doesn't matter.
Vanderneker's star, something like this.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Well remembered. Yeah. And at the point at which we enter the story, the ship is about 40 to 50 years away from reaching its destination. So it's fairly close to the end of its voyage. Some people will be able to reach it within their lifetimes. And then we get a couple of suspicious deaths. Now, I don't want to really go into any plot depth here. I'm going to try and keep this fairly spoiler-free. But Yuri is assigned by a mysterious woman to investigate these two deaths. And that is basically what sparks off the plot. And from there on, this is all pretty much still in chapter 1. Things start to get increasingly complicated. More mysteries unveil, and the first half.
It's not just about the accidental deaths. There's a lot more.
There's a whole lot
to it.
There's layer upon layer of mystery. It's not just mysteries over the crime. It mysteries about what's going on in a much wider sense. But yeah, the characters. So we've only mentioned a couple so far, but there are quite a lot of characters in this book. I think some of them are kind of like archetypes in a way, I think, of the noir genre.
Yes.
I think we mentioned Litz is kind of that kind of washed up.
Limmy Litz.
Limmy Litz, yeah. He was one of the most gritty characters, and it's not always clear whether he's a protagonist or working against Yuri.
Right, yeah. Early on in the first half, he's kind of he's a cop, but he's like kicked off the force. He's kind of it's not clear if he's a bad cop. Is he a good cop? And then Yuri works with him a little bit. And when I was reading in the first half, I was kind of like, well, should Yuri really trust this guy? I don't know if he's a trustworthy guy.
But the thing I like about Litz as a character, at first I thought he's just a kind of archetype. I think his character arc is quite interesting, which you've alluded to, Brandon, but yeah, he does actually become quite important in the story.
Yes.
Are there any other characters?
One other interesting thing about Lemmy, right, is that at least I feel like later on in the book, Lemmy, there's a little bit of humor that gets injected into Lemmy's character. He has a lot of one-liners, I feel like, that are a little snappy. And I feel like that element of humor in the dialogue, I guess I hadn't seen before in like a Reynolds. Like usually his books aren't funny to me, right?
Right.
There are a few one-liners. I was like, oh, that's a pretty good line there, And I feel like that character was a little bit unique in that he injected a little bit of humor, especially towards the end, into some of the conversations.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
He has kind of like wry observational wit. And I appreciated that.
Yeah.
Were there any other characters that you would like to mention? Any characters that stood out for you, or any favorite characters?
Yeah, I think we can mention Milvis. He's kind of when the story starts, he's Yuri's only friend. And he's kind of a conspiracy theorist guy. He has all these wild ideas about the ship, and Yuri likes to sit down and play checkers with him and drink his coffee, and they kind of share ideas. What did you guys think about Milvis?
I liked Milvis. I thought that Milvis didn't get a ton of he got some screen time, but he I think he helped introduce ideas of like broadening the plot beyond the original murder. I think he was a way for with his conspiracies for the reader to be like, hey, is this guy crazy? Does he have something going on? Does he know what's happening? Right. So I liked Milvis when for a while it seemed like Milvis and Lemmy were Yuri's two buddies, and I was like, it's a fun little trio.
Yes. Yeah, and I think, like I say, he serves an important function in widening the scope of the mysteries, I think. But for me, I think there's another character that I particularly liked. By the way, there are a lot of characters in this book. We're only scratching the surface here. A Sputnik, who is a robot assistant that gets assigned to, and so he's kind of like a sentient AI.
Yeah.
And I think he also has quite an interesting character arc. He doesn't just remain a static character throughout the book. He does play quite an important role. And I also think he adds a bit of humor because he appears, he often appears quite inept, but actually his character does have a lot of depth to it as we.
Yeah, and it kind of reminded me of the robot novels by Asimov. because we got because those novels are kind of a crime mystery too, and the main character has a robot, Daniel Olival, who helps him in the mystery. So I wonder if Reynolds kind of had some influence from there.
Possibly.
Yeah, I think the relationship also between like Yuri and Sputnik is interesting because at the beginning, Yuri is a little bit like, this robot's not that useful, right? Like I don't really care about this robot at all. And eventually their relationship gets, deeper and they become, closer than just, a human, that's kind of controlling a robot. But that relationship becomes important later on in the story.
Yeah, they kind of grow into a friendship.
Yeah, and
I really like Reynolds. Anytime he does a robot, it's so this Sputnik he's like a humanoid metal figure, so he doesn't look like a person. He looks like an old time robot that you'd expect from on the cover of a vintage sci-fi novel.
Yeah. And he does display signs of behavior that shows that he is an artificial intelligence, but at the same time, he also is more of a sympathetic character than a lot of the human characters. He shows more humanity.
Mm-hmm. So I think we should talk a little bit about the rubies. We got ruby blue and ruby red. So now this doesn't necessarily have to do with the story, but so there's a mistake on the blurb of the book, right? So the blurb says Yuri's hired by Ruby Red. I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but in the first chapter, it's actually Ruby Blue that hires Yuri. It's not Ruby Red.
Yes, I noticed that. So the two rubies, by the way, I think they're sisters, aren't they? And they, and this isn't a spoiler, by the way, because all of this is in the blurb, albeit with this mistake.
This Blue, description is everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's wrong. They somehow got the rubies mixed up in the description, which
even in the cover, she's wearing like a red coat.
I've never seen a mistake like that in a book before. So that I don't know what happened there. I'm sure Alastair had nothing to do with it. I'm sure it was the publisher, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
I noticed that. So Ruby Red appears on the scene later and appears to be acting against the interests of Ruby Blue, who is the mysterious woman who hires Yuri. And as you said in the blurb, it gets mixed up. It'll be interesting to see if that gets corrected in the US edition.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a look on Amazon.com and it had exactly the same description.
Yeah, it's in the description everywhere you look. Amazon, Goodreads.
Yeah, page 6, Ruby Blue.
I wonder if they released an arc of this book, like a physical arc, because that's the kind of thing that should get noticed.
I'm not sure.
I might have seen it on NetGalley. Sometimes I use that to get arcs.
Yeah, I didn't see it on NetGalley because I looked for an arc for this. Oh, no, it wasn't on
NetGalley. No.
So it reminds me, I picked up an arc a few weeks back, and this particular book, and they had a spelling mistake in the title. I forget. I'm trying to remember what it's called now. It had the word principal spelt with LE on the end, and on the spine it was spelt principal with AL, like the two different principals.
Yeah,
and I thought that's such a blunder, like on the cover of the book. But it was only an arc, so I guess they corrected it.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, at least it was an arc.
Yeah. So that was a little bit confusing when I saw that, because I thought, hang on, am I getting this mixed up? And I thought,
yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, maybe there's stuff we haven't learned yet because it's a mystery thriller that will turn up. It's actually
it's just a mistake.
But yeah, so those are a handful of the characters. There's also the antagonists, these two families, which I mentioned. And I really need to write these things down because I can't remember what they're called now.
The Del Rosso and the Uris, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Two of the elite families on the Halcyon. So I guess they've kind of controlled the ship for, the entire time it's been on its voyage.
Yes, and they're almost like aristocratic families, aren't they?
Yep.
Because they seem to have sort of control and oversee everything, and they have done
Yeah.
for generations.
But they're very much feuding. Like, these two families really, they work together to help with like the ship, but they really kind of hate each other. And they're, I think, a little bit, they're always competitive with each other. They do not get along, but they share a lot of the power that you see across the ship.
Mhm.
Right. And so there's two deaths early on in the story, one in each family, and they're both quite young people. Like there's I think a teenage girl, isn't it, or a young woman and a boy.
I think it's right before they turn 20 or 18, something like this.
Yes. And at first, it's the official line is it's an accident, but there's obviously something more going on. And
Right.
yeah. So yeah, it's one thing I haven't asked you yet is like your overall opinions on this book. I didn't even ask you if you actually enjoyed it. So I'm going to start with Audrey. What are your overall thoughts?
Yeah. So my favorite parts about Reynolds' books, I feel like, are the really big ideas. And I think a lot of people probably really like that aspect of his novels and his world building. You know, I think about something like the glitter band, right? In the Revelation space world. I remember there's a few scenes, and maybe it was the prefect, where he goes into like the different habitats and you see all these different worlds. I love the ideas. I think the ideas are so good. I love the big time spans. I love, all of that. And I feel like that, more so than mystery plots, more so than, character development, is again my favorite part of his book. And I think this book leans more, like, the most into the mystery aspect, more than developing characters that maybe last across series. And while there is definitely some big ideas in here, I think that, again, the main focus is the mystery plot. So I would say that I did enjoy it. I think the beginning was a little bit slow for me right at the beginning, but like you said, there's a lot of characters, a lot of introduction. We have to kind of get used to stuff. I think, like you guys, I kind of blaze through the last quarter or third of the book because there's a lot of action packed towards the end. So again, I did enjoy it a lot. It's not my favorite Reynolds, though, because again, it doesn't have as much of that expansive world building that I just really enjoy. What about you, Brandon?
Yeah.
I liked it. So I'd probably give it around a 4 out of 5 stars. It's it's a quick paced read. So yeah, there's not the big expansive stuff going on, but I kind of did like the world building. It's all contained to the Halcyon, of course, but I like the world building of the Halcyon. I like the mystery aspect, the noir aspect. Yeah, I wouldn't put it as my favorite Reynolds book, but I did really like it. I thought, I kind of wavered between like 4.5 to, I don't think I'd give it a 5-star, but 4 to 4.5, and I think I'm going to stick with 4. Some of the first half, I would say the dialogue's a little clunky. It feels a little clunky at times, would be my only criticism. But yeah, once you get into like the second half, the last third, as all the mysteries begin to unravel, I mean, the pacing really picks up, and I just flew through that part. But once you get through kind of the setup in the beginning, the book really gets a lot, really good.
What about you, Robin? I know you really liked it.
I think I kind of agree with Brandon a lot here. The funny thing is, like, as soon as I finished it, I thought that was amazing. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, but I probably would have said like 4.5 stars. Having reflected a little bit after a week, I think maybe it's being a little bit generous. Maybe 4 stars or 4.5 stars. I just, but the thing, when I was reading it, I was so engaged. I was there was never a dull moment. It's very fast paced. I really appreciated that the kind of layers upon layers of mystery just keep on building and building. But Reynolds never keeps you waiting too long. So I thought, as a mystery thriller, I think it works really well. I think I found the sci-fi world building. Yes, it's not quite as expansive as some of his other works, but it is quite fascinating. And I think it becomes more so as the story progresses, and it's difficult to explain why without spoiling stuff. So yeah, I agree. I don't think it's one of his best works. I think Reynolds' standard of writing is so high. I wouldn't like everything I've read by him is at least 4 to 4.5 stars. So, but if I compare it to say like The Prefect, I don't think it's quite as rich or an immersive story or quite as exciting. But it's a very tight and entertaining sci-fi thriller. So that's why I think it deserves a very high rating in my book, just because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, I think The Prefect has the benefit of that expansive world for him to grab and use in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense, right? Because The Prefect is based on the Revelation space world. So like he can kind of build off of the world building that he already has built in a previous novel. That's a good point.
What did you guys think of the Halcyon ship itself? Speaking of the world building, so it's like I didn't realize at first how like this is a really massive ship. So it's like 50 kilometers long. Kind of reminded me of like I thought maybe of Rendezvous with Rama, like the curved interior. Like you're standing and you see everything curves up and it rotates to keep gravity and things like that. It's got a whole world in it. It's got lakes. It's got, wooded areas and forests. It's got cities. I think more than one. I think it's got a city and maybe a couple other towns. So this is like a massive, massive ship. It's not just like a small starship.
I kind of thought the opposite. I was like, you spend your whole life on this. You spend like generations of people, and it's only 56 kilometers, right? I was like, wait, I want to go further than that. But I did also have like similar imagery of like a long curved kind of seeing the edge of it come up.
Yeah.
And they have this, I think like what they call a sky tube, which almost provides like the light or the weather above the habitat.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of Rama, and then we have like if you guys have read the book Eon by Greg Bear, he has like a big asteroid that has a massive interior in it. So it kind of reminded me of those books. It's like it's the size of a big asteroid, I would think. I mean, 50 kilometers is really pretty big for a starship.
Yeah. It's basically a fully closed artificial environment, but it includes, as you said, nature and lakes and woodland and hills and cities and stuff. So it's almost like
they have cars. They drive around with cars and stuff. So there's enough space for roads and all that.
The funny thing is, I can't remember at which point in the story they like refer to the sky tube and the ship and stuff. But if you just went into this book blind, if you didn't look at the cover or the blurb, or you didn't know it's a sci-fi novel, you could just start reading and think this is just set on Earth, right? It's only like after a while they start mentioning the sky tube and you think, what is that?
Yeah, there is one point where Yuri, he like goes to kind of a cliff overlook, I think, or maybe it was a balcony or something. He's like looking over the entirety of Halcyon. He kind of describes everything he sees.
Yeah, I remember that. I think that's when he went to visit. He went to visit the clinic where one of individuals who passed away.
Yeah, so that's kind of where you start to get like the feel of how big the ship really is.
Yeah. So, do I have any more questions? Would you want a sequel to Halcyon Years? Would that be a good idea? And would you want it to happen, Audrey?
No, because I like standalones. I feel like he, I don't think we've talked about this yet, but I feel like sometimes with Reynolds books, like in the past, I feel like his endings are a little bit rushed, right? Even House of Suns, which I really love, like maybe my favorite Reynolds book, I feel like the ending's a little bit rushed. It just kind of quickly wraps up. And I feel like, if anything, he kind of did a really good ending on this novel because things wrap up, but it doesn't feel super rushed. It's like a clean ending. So I feel like, also the way that kind of some of the mysteries unravel, you couldn't really, I don't think you could really do like another, something's gone bad and Yuri has to investigate. Maybe you could, but there would definitely be a lot more other background and other knowledge that, many of the characters would have, especially after having finished this. What do you think? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think Yuri's story is probably over. But I mean, I would read a sequel though if he wanted to kind of further explore the history of the Halcyon. So there's some things revealed in this novel. I won't talk about them, but kind of gives it more of an expansive history that he could kind of dive into. But I think for the most part, Yuri's story is probably should be over from here.
And I think it's unlikely that there will be any other books set in this universe.
Yeah, I doubt. Yeah, I don't think there would be.
It is quite a tightly focused story, and I think that is something of a trend that Alastair Reynolds has been doing with some of his recent works. He's gone for sort of shorter, standalone sci-fi books with self-contained stories, rather than the kind of the sprawling space operas and series that from his earlier work.
Have either of you guys read many of his standalones?
I've read Aversion and House of Suns, of course. I think that might be it.
So
Dagger and Vici, I've read that one.
Yeah, I think for me, it's most of his standalone stuff, aside from this, that I've read, has been novellas.
Have you read Versions yet, Robin?
Haven't read that one, and I don't own a copy of that one. I've also read the Dagger and Vichy. In fact, I think we all have. And actually last year I read a standalone novella of his called Permafrost, which I thought was amazing. It's a time travel story.
Yeah, so I would kind of rank this next to Eversions. I think I probably like this and Eversions about the same, but I liked House of Suns is better, Pushing Ice is better. So it kind of sits under those. Of course, House of Suns is kind of considered, I think a lot of people think that's his best work, but I would rank it under those two and on the same level as Eversions, I think.
I think also similar to Aversion, very high level in that they both start where you're, again, like if you were just dropped into the book, you hadn't read anything, you'd be like, is this sci-fi? Right?
Yeah, I haven't read his Century Reign, which is also kind of a noir mystery, so I'm kind of eager to read that and see how it stacks up.
Have any of you guys read like the Revenger series?
Yeah, I think that's more of a YA.
Is that a younger audience? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
From what I've heard from others, it is more on the sort of YA spectrum, but plenty of older readers can enjoy it. If you like Alastair Reynolds' work, you'll probably still enjoy it. Yeah, I think this year, the 3 Alastair Reynolds books that I'm hoping to get through, one is House of Suns. There's Zima Blue, which is his short story collection. I think short stories are in modern science fiction, I think, are sometimes a bit overlooked. But I having read some of his other short stories, I think he's also very talented in that form.
Yeah, he's a fantastic short story writer.
Yeah. And 2 of the stories from that collection were adapted to Love, Death and Robots on Netflix. And the other one is he wrote a Doctor Who novel called Harvest of Time, which I'm not a huge Doctor Who fan, but I'm intrigued to see what he does with that. And when I met him a few years ago and I got him to sign that book, and he drew a little TARDIS when he signed it. So yeah, I want to read that one this year, hopefully, if I get around to it. So yeah.
Audrey, how do you rank him with others? Do you read much sci-fi? I mean, how much sci-fi do you read?
Yeah, I read some, but nowhere near as much as you two.
So how would you rank Reynolds next to other sci-fi you've read?
I mean, he would be really high up there. He's probably, even having read only like 6 or 7 of his books, probably maybe my most read sci-fi author. I love Ted Chiang's short stories. Mm-hmm. I love those. I think those are brilliant. So that's another sci-fi author that I really like. But I just keep kind of coming back to Reynolds' books. And, I read 6 or 7 of them last year. And I think this year I really want to get to some of the ones you guys mentioned, especially Chasm City. I think that one's definitely going to be my next one. Yeah.
Audrey, have you read the Revelation Space books?
I have read the first in the series.
Okay.
But I have not finished with that series yet. Yeah, that I finished the Revelation Space, the first book, and I was like, my brain hurts a little bit. I need a little bit of time between now and the next one.
Yeah.
Robin, would you put Reynolds near the top of your favorite authors?
Yes, and I think I'm on record of already having said that. So at least in terms of like contemporary authors who are writing today, he's definitely up there. Well, yeah, he probably is my top one, because I was going to say alongside Agent Tchaikovsky, but to be honest, I think Agent Tchaikovsky, I love what he does, but he doesn't always deliver for me. It's like sometimes
he has such a high output that sometimes they're just okay.
Yeah,
but he writes so many books that one or two of them is bound to be really good.
Yeah, I've had hit or miss with him before. I was reading a Reddit thread talking about Reynolds books, and I remember some like random commenter had said that some of the Reynolds books lean a little bit dark in tone, right? Like dark, like humanity is a little more pessimistic. I think we talked about that, and they said like the opposite version of that. They recommended, I just looked it up, Infinity Gate by M.R. Carey is like more of like a hopeful tone. I don't know. I added it to my list of books to read. Having read that, you haven't read that one? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why like Blue Remember Earth is a little bit different, because he sets that kind of gritty feel aside and he's more optimistic.
Okay. Was Blue Remembered Earth an earlier? I don't know. When was that published? That was published in 2012. Okay, so not too long ago.
Yeah, that's part of a trilogy as well.
Yeah.
It's not a standalone.
But yeah, if you're looking for the kind of opposite of that vibe, if you want something really optimistic, you could check out Becky Chambers if you haven't already.
I know that name.
Yeah. So she wrote.
I have read A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet.
Okay, yeah.
That is very much like I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that assessment. Yeah.
So yeah, she's written a few books in that universe, but she's also written a few standalones or other series, I think. But all of them have this kind of optimistic, upbeat vision of the future. Yeah.
Yeah, Reynolds looks like he releases like one book a year on average, at least in the last decade or so. So he is, a very prolific writer as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's going to be able to get his next book out this year. I know he I think he talked to you about it recently, Robin, but he finished up his Merlin stories, and I think it was a couple months ago.
Yes, that's going to be interesting to see, isn't it? Because I don't really know much about those books or that universe or how the stories connect.
I haven't either. I haven't read any of them.
I don't know if that will take the form of a short story collection or novella collection, or even a kind of like the equivalent of a fix-up novel. I don't know what you really call it. But
I kind of got the impression it's maybe a little bit of a fix-up novel, but I'm not sure.
What do you guys mean by fix-up?
So, well, basically, this is a term which is normally applied to like old sci-fi novels, which were basically stitched together from short stories that were originally published in a magazine. This is back in the 40s or the 50s or whatever, and the publishers decided to adapt it, turn it into a novel, but often the narrative thread that links them is not necessarily very consistent. So I think a good example of this is The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, which is a collection of short stories. I loved it.
Yeah.
Or City by Simak. But it's more of a trend from decades ago. It's not something writers tend to do today. So it would be interesting to see what he does with the Merlin books.
He had these short stories based on a character named Merlin. I haven't read any of them. They are science fiction. So he took those, and I think he's either putting them in a collection, but he said he wrote like 50,000 more words for it. And I think he improved the writing on some of the old stories. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what form that takes. And I wonder if it's going to be able to get out near the end of this year, or are we going to be waiting until next year to get that?
Are there any?
Because I know he did finish it a couple of months ago and sent it in to the publisher, but you got to add all the edits and all that sort of things.
Yeah. Is there any non-Reynolds sci-fi books that you're most anticipated for 2026?
Definitely Tchaikovsky's newest one, Children of Strife, which I actually do have an arc for that. I'm going to wait to read it a little closer to release date. And then The Faith of Beasts, which is a sequel to Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. I think those are the two I'm most excited for.
So in my case, I'm also very much looking forward to Children of Strife. However, I probably won't get it as soon as it's released. And the reason for that is I've got all three of the other Children of Time books in paperback. And I just basically, I don't want to have a hardback. I want them to be matching. But the other thing is...
So I can understand that.
Those three books, when I met Agent Tchaikovsky 2.5 years ago, he signed them all and he drew a little doodle in each book. For each book, he drew a cartoon of the animal in that book. So, for example, there's a little cartoon spider on Children of Time. So I'm hoping at some point I get to meet him again, and then he can, doodle on the fourth book.
He's coming out with the second in the Elder's Race series this year.
Yeah, that's in
later
this year, like September.
I think I probably will read that because I really enjoyed Elder Race, and it's a novella, so that's not much of an investment of my time. But in terms of
Robin, isn't your copy of Halcyon Years signed?
It is, yes, and that was unexpected because
how did you manage to get that?
I bought this in Waterstones, which is like the UK's most popular bookstore chain. So I got it in person, but I'll show you this. So this is the signature, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was signed until after I bought it.
Oh, lucky surprise.
Yeah, that's awesome.
In fact, when I asked for it, because when I went into the store, I asked, "Do you have this book?" And because it wasn't on the shelves, one of the staff members had to go and find a copy for me. So I guess it was in stock somewhere, and she said, "Yeah, we've got one copy." And that's the one I've got. But in terms of new releases this year, I think there's one book which I'm looking forward to. Is fairly obscure; it's not very well known. But Alan Stroud is another British science fiction writer who does space opera, and he's another book in his Fractal series, and it's called Anti-State. I believe. Really cool cover art. Yeah, I think he's an underrated author. He's written some of the most intense and vivid hard SF that I've ever read.
I have his first book in that series, which I actually got after I saw you talk about it. I haven't read it yet though, so I need to read that soon.
What would be the first book in the series for him?
Yeah, it's called Fearless.
Fearless.
Yeah. And it's
for Fractal series. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So I can recommend Fearless. It's got a kind of I think it feels like it's written in real time. So each chapter basically follows on for the next. There's no break between each chapter. So if you've ever watched 24, it kind of feels like that, the reading experience. And it's very intense action thriller. Yeah. Highly recommended.
Okay, I'll add that to my list. I enjoyed it's called the Greenbone Saga by by Fonda Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I know she has a new, I think it's almost she reads fantasy, but I think this next one leans a little bit more into sci-fi. I think it's called
it's supposed to be a sci-fi, yeah.
Of Isako, I think. Anyway, I really like the channel that Patrick Lau. He does more fantasy than sci-fi, but he reads some, and he highly recommended that one. And I feel like I get a lot of winners from him, so he put that. I feel like
that's probably going to lean more towards sci-fi fantasy, kind of a mix.
Yeah.
Cool.
Science fantasy, I think, is that maybe what they're calling it these days.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've discussed a lot today, and I really appreciate your time and sharing your thoughts on this book. And Alastair Reynolds and other sci-fi and what have you. So yeah, check out Halcyon Years if you're reading this. I can definitely recommend it. Check out more of Alastair Reynolds' work, and especially if you like crime thrillers, if you like sci-fi noir, any kind of tightly packed mystery thriller, I think you will get something out of this book. Any last words you'd like to say before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I'd recommend Halcyon Years, and just want to say thanks for having us on here and reaching out and setting up this book talk buddy read thing. So I really appreciate if you invite me on the channel.
Yeah, the best part about YouTube so far has been meeting other folks that, you know, that have channels and love nerding out about books as well. So yeah, thanks so much for having me along as well. It was a lot of fun. Even though I frantically read it this week after both of you guys had finished because I'm a bit of a procrastinator.
Great. So I'll put links to Audrey's and Brandon's channels in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.